to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Joining me today here on the podcast is Aaron McMann, who covers Michigan football for MLive.com and the Ann Arbor News. You can follow him on Twitter or X at Aaron McMann. Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. It's starting to warm up here in Michigan, so it's been weather's getting better.
That's always good to hear when the weather is going to turn and you get some sunlight outside for the majority of the day. Always makes life a little bit more easier, I think. We're going to talk today about Kenneth Grant, 13th overall pick in the draft, went to the Miami Dolphins. You covered him for his entire time at Michigan. And my first question is, was there any chance he was going to return for his final year at Michigan, or was this like known after this year, he's going pro, he's too good, there's no chance he's coming back?
Yeah, the assumption after this past season when is that he was going to go. I mean, look, he was part of a really good, stout Michigan defensive line. He played next to Mason Graham, who ended up going number 5th overall. So like the assumption was he was going to go, but he didn't make his decision right away. It took him a few weeks. My understanding is he went off to I think a tropical island with his girlfriend to finally make the final decision. Certainly he was leaning toward going to the NFL draft. I think maybe there was a sliver of chance of coming back to Michigan, depending on maybe what the NIL offer was going to be. But look, I mean, 13th overall pick, you can't argue against it. I will say that the word coming into the draft, or a lot of folks had a second round grade on him. In fact, Michigan's defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, he has an NFL pedigree himself, said as much. So I think there was a little consideration coming back, but I think the large assumption was that he was going to go.
Yeah, and he played next to Mason Graham, who you said went 5th overall to Cleveland. Compare the style of play between those two, because they play the same spot. They're both on the same line. I'm sure they complemented each other greatly, and they helped each other both get picked so high in this draft just by being next to each other. Are they the same type of player? Are they not the same? So for fans who might not watch Michigan week in, week out, can you explain the style of play between the two?
Yeah, they definitely complement each other. Kenneth's more of a nose tackle-ish. Kenneth Grant's more of that more pass rushing defensive tackle. And look, Kenneth's just a bigger guy. I mean, he's 6'4", 331. He would clog up the line there. He did a very good job doing it. And I think that's why the two are so successful next to one another. They did different things well. They complemented each other well. And they spent a lot of time playing next to each other. They were both came in the same class. They both played as true freshmen. They both kind of came up together. And in the last couple of years, they've started next to each other. So they got to know each other very well. I think they got to play off each other's strengths and in some cases weaknesses. But no, he's definitely more the nose the nose guy. I suspect that's probably where the Dolphins will fit him in there in Miami. But and I think it speaks to his size. I mean, he's a big dude. He's strong. He's definitely wide, a little bit more wider than Mason Graham. Look, the knock against Graham coming into the draft was that he was a little undersized for the defensive tackle role. Some folks thought he was almost too small, whereas Kenneth Grant, I think, is more the prototypical nose tackle.
When he arrived at Michigan, was he thought more highly of than Mason Graham, or are they both seen as like 5-star guys or however many stars? Were they seen as kind of equals? Was one rated higher than the other? What was the first impressions when they both went to Michigan?
Yeah, that's a good question because they were both kind of under recruited. Kenneth probably
Wow.
more so than Mason Graham. Kenneth was a low 4-star, borderline 3-star kid.
Wow.
Didn't have a ton of offers. If you can go to his 24/7 sports page and maybe a dozen or so, handful of Big Ten, a lot of MAC offers. he was kind of under recruited. It was interesting because he played both sides of the ball in high school, played the offensive line, played the defensive line. He started all 4 years, yet he was overlooked. And I think that goes to show how, I guess, the job Michigan did at developing really both of them. Mason was more of a low to mid 4-star, so ranked a little higher than Kenneth.
Yeah.
But no, Kenneth was under recruited, and he was kind of, in a way, a diamond in the rough Michigan was able to find, and they were able to build up. And I think they recognized early on what they had in him, because he played as a true freshman, played all 14 games as a true freshman. They were all backup roles, but like, you could tell Jim Harbaugh and the staff at that point realized what they had, and they were kind of fast tracking him, because by the time his sophomore year hit, he was starting, he was having an impact on games, and he was turning into an all Big Ten player.
Yeah, and the leap from his first year to his second year as a sophomore, I read something online, I don't know if it's true, which you might know, he lost 20 pounds, and that sort of helped, I guess, him as a sophomore. Has weight always been a factor for him? Is it kind of like a yo-yo where he goes up and down? Does he have control of it type of deal? Because, you're that big. That is always going to be an issue, I think. But weight-wise, was that something where he lost some weight, he became a little bit quicker on the field? And how has the weight been for him, like, overall?
Yeah, I don't really recall the weight being much of an issue then. So I'm guessing that the idea was to slim him down a little bit to make him quicker and expedite, help him with the speed a little bit. Because look, they played him as true freshman, so clearly I don't think they worried too much. And at that point, I think Michigan was looking for those smaller, more speedier defensive tackles. Last year or two, they've really bulked up with the size up front. So no, I mean, if you look at him, if you meet him in person, he doesn't really look like he's 330 pounds. Yes, he's a big dude, but he's on the lean side of that, I guess you could say. So I don't think he has an issue putting on or taking off weight. And in fact, I don't know what Miami's going to do with him, but I got to think 6'4", 330. He's in pretty good shape. No, I mean, I don't really remember it being much of an issue. And as we saw, I mean, he played a ton at Michigan, so they clearly didn't think it was either.
Yeah, and I think in Miami, he's probably going to start off at the nose and play and be lined up next to Zach Sealer, who's been just an absolutely fantastic player for the Dolphins the past 3 or 4 years or so, if not even a little more. And it's going to be a similar situation where he's going to be playing next to someone who's also really, really good, which he's probably used to from his time in Michigan. And that's not going to change much. It just won't be Mason Graham. It'll be Zach there. And I think that's going to help him a lot too as a rookie. I think just having someone so good lined up right next to you. So I would expect the transition to the NFL won't be, some kids are just thrown right into the pool, sink or swim. I think for Grant's in a nice spot, knowing he's got like a Pro Bowl type guy lining up right next to him.
That's exactly, especially these high level draft guys. If you throw them into the water and they're expected to be that top guy in the middle and take control and everything else, that's what a recipe for disaster in some situations. And when you put them next to an experienced guy that, as we were talking about with Mason Graham at Michigan, they can complement, they can help him come along. That's the best case scenario. So if that's what the Dolphins are envisioning, it makes sense to me, and it certainly would set Kenneth Grant up for success, because look, he may not be an impact player year one. It may take him some time to transition, but like, the kid has all the tools. I mean, he's long, he's broad, he's powerful. The one knock against him, and I saw it from NFL draft scouts and analysts and everything else, but he can lack explosiveness sometimes, especially on the first step. But if he's got someone next to him that can make up for that, it really doesn't really matter as long as he holds up in the run game.
Yeah, I sort of see him as, to toss out those insider terms for the draft. High floor, high ceiling. High floor probably won't be a bust per se, and he does have a high ceiling. If everything lines up right, he'll be great. But even if that isn't the case, he won't be a bust per se. High floor guy where he's always going to be a pretty good guy. And I think that's probably why Miami took him where they did. Now, I know this past year for Michigan, obviously 2023, win national championship, cloud nine. Everything's great. Sunshine and rainbows. 2024 didn't go as well. Did you see any change with not just him per se, with the team, where some of the players didn't have the effort or the hustle when the season you could tell this won't end well this season? Did you see any of the players kind of like mail it in some, or anything like that? Like with the top guys, I should say.
Yeah, no, you didn't, because I think you saw Michigan finish the season strong as opposed to how it started. I mean,
Yep,
they
they
really
did.
struggled. They struggled out of the gate, and they closed they closed the regular season with a pair of wins over Northwestern and then Ohio State, who at that point was ranked high, and the assumption was Ohio State was going to come in and blow Michigan's doors off, and it didn't happen. So they finished the season strong, and you never really saw a drop off of the defensive line. Like Michigan really struggled last year, and most of that came on the offense side of the ball. They had below average
Oh, I
quarterback
could have played
play.
quarterback for him. I think I could
Yeah,
have played quarterback.
the offensive line wasn't what Michigan was used to. They didn't have the weapons on the outside, so most of the struggles were on the defensive or the offensive side of the ball. If you flip on that tape from that Ohio State game at the end of the year, the reason Michigan won that game was because of the defense and the defensive line. I mean, they really kept Ohio State in check. They couldn't run the football. And then they had to throw the ball, and Michigan was getting enough turnovers. So no, you didn't really see the drop off from those guys. There's no doubt about it. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, they really played through the season. Now those guys didn't play in the bowl game, and like, I don't blame them, because that
No,
was a
I don't blame
meaningless
him either.
game, and
Yeah.
they were projected to be first round picks. So, but no, you didn't see it. And look, from a personality standpoint, my guess, one of the reasons why the Dolphins picked Kenneth was so high is because of the personality. Dude is I've been covering that Michigan now I just finished my 8th season. One of the most enjoyable kids I've talked to, hands down. And I don't say that lightly. Nice kid, very polite. I'm guessing he interviewed really well. Smart kid. He's not going to get in trouble. No personality issues, no locker room issues. In fact, you make the case maybe he's too quiet, and he's not.
Yeah.
That's not something you'd expect from a defensive lineman. So no, my guess is he interviewed well. His tape looks good. Personality wise is great, and he's a good player on the field. So it all makes
And
sense.
yeah, that does make a lot of sense because what they're going through right now in Miami with Tyreek Hill and just nonstop off the field issues.
Mhm.
Ramsey, whatever's going on there, the whole story doesn't come out, but he won't be here next year. And whether he asked for a trade or they just don't want him around anymore, we'll find out in time. But with all that, having a good guy, add a good guy to the roster who could maybe not year one as a rookie, year 2, year 3, year 4, maybe become a leader on the team. I think that probably did play a factor, knowing we got to not just fix things on the field. We got to fix things with the culture behind the scenes, which the fans don't see every day. But we need more of that type of player than like the Hills and stuff's going on there. So that probably did play a larger factor, I think, in why they maybe took him. You mentioned the Ohio State game. Obviously, after the game, got all the headlines, everything that happened. Just not anything with Grant per se, because I doubt he was involved from everything you're saying. But has anything come from that since? Because I know that's one of those things, 24 hours, 72 hours, news cycle, it's everywhere. Then you just stop hearing about it. Like, what's come from that since all that happened? Anything?
No, nothing's really come from it, and it's funny. Kenneth wasn't involved with it. Mason
Yeah.
was a little bit, and I think it was more jawing than anything. But no, nothing has come from it since. It's weird because as the situation transpired on the field that day, pepper spray was deployed by the police. I know it was made a big deal at that point of why are the police using pepper spray on players? Like, this stuff happens before. Like, is it necessary for that stuff? Since then, it's all been all quiet. There hasn't been much at all. Like the Michigan Ohio State rivalry really has beefed up the last couple of years,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
given Michigan since they flipped it a little bit. Tensions always run high. It's funny with this game because for those maybe unfamiliar with Michigan or the rivalry aspect, Michigan really has two rivals. The in-state rival, Michigan State,
Yep.
and Ohio State. Well, the national folks generally watch college football, pay attention to Ohio State, but sometimes it runs almost deeper with Michigan State. So it's weird. Like you'll see this stuff happen at the end of the Michigan Ohio State games, trash talk. I remember a couple years ago, Roman Wilson was blasting Ohio State, but it almost seems like once these guys get to the NFL, it all goes away. They're all buddies, and it's no big deal. It's professional football.
Everyone's making money now. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
now
right.
they're all making money in college too, so I guess that's changed. But they're all making money. Everyone's happy. And I will say, the one thing that came from that isn't like the stuff with the cops and the pepper spray. That lit a fire in Ohio State that propelled them to win. If that don't
Yeah.
happen, I'm not sure they win a national championship because that team looked dead that week. They had no life, and we lost to them again. But everything that happened after that game seemed like to rally them, and they then go on to win the national title. And really, up until the final game, those games prior to that weren't even that close. They were blowing everyone out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And look, I'll admit, like going into that game, I didn't think Michigan stood a chance. I mean,
No, I
Michigan had
didn't
struggled
either.
offensively. Ohio State had so much more to play for. It was wild, and it was in Columbus, so it's one of those situations where it was set up perfectly for Ohio State. And as the game transpires, it's like I've seen this movie before. Like I've seen this close game, Michigan muck it up and force in Ohio State into some uncharacteristic turnovers or mistakes, and then they hold on for the win. So it was in all my years covering Michigan, Ohio State, was probably the most improbable for me, just because like Michigan
Yeah.
they just weren't very
Michigan
good
was
this
so
year.
bad on offense last year.
Yeah,
So bad.
they couldn't move the football. They had an inadequate quarterback. They had, as I was detailing earlier, there was no talent really on the offense side of the ball. Yet somehow, through the defense, and then obviously a couple of easy scores, and then a late field goal, they were able to pull it out.
Yeah.
So just a wild game.
One player, too, I want to ask you about, because in the lead up to the draft, there's a million mock drafts. Everyone's got a mock
Sure.
draft, but the people you trust, Todd McShay, Mo Kiper, those people, they had Will Johnson top part of round 1. A lot of people had him to Miami at pick 13.
Mhm.
And then like a week or so prior to the draft, there's some rumblings, reports, knee issue. He's fine now, but long term, this is going to affect him. And it seems like all those reports had to be true because he fell to round 2.
Mhm.
Was that known at Michigan? Did you guys find out like in the past week or so when everyone else found out? What was that all about?
Yeah, it's a good question. That was for me the biggest surprise of the draft. Everyone's talking about Shedeur Sanders dropping, and look, rightfully so. Will Johnson. I mean, there was a point back in October, November, December where some people had Will Johnson going number 1 overall. Like Matt Miller,
If not
ESPN
for
had him
the
as his top
injuries,
prospect.
he probably would have been. He's that
Right.
good.
So yeah. So he was banged up most of his Michigan career. Like it's hard to find a year where he played every single game. He was either injured for some reason or another. This past year we were told it was a toe injury. He missed half the basically the second half of the season. Didn't play in that Ohio State game. Didn't play down the stretch. He's dealing with a toe injury, and then we find out going to the combine he had a hamstring injury that kept him from working out in Indianapolis. So he was dealing with issues. As far as the knee, that was something we may have heard about, and from what I was told, it's something he's been dealing with now for a couple of years. He just kind of played through and didn't really think anything of it. Well, he goes to the combine in Indianapolis, gets screened by the NFL teams, and that comes up in the medical report, and it's getting flagged as a possible debilitative injury, long-term thing. So I think that's why you saw him fall so far. You didn't want to see NFL teams didn't want to waste a first-round pick on someone who may or may not be, still in the league in a couple of years due to the knee. So I think that's why. But based on what we saw at Michigan, very good corner, very good in zone coverage, very big physical. Maybe not the fastest dude in the world, but he, if he can stay healthy, he can become one of the best corners in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he has all the skills. It was really just about the injuries. And I think even those injuries are like kind of run-of-the-mill type injuries. People don't look too deep in, but the knee thing probably scared a lot of people. Couple more questions for you, but real quick, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, Caneswear. Everyone go to the website, caneswear.com, for the best and most affordable Miami Dolphins apparel on the internet. And also visit their store at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida. Michigan, obviously last year, like we said, rough year, quarterback. Have they resolved the quarterback issue, or at least have higher hopes with some people they brought in to this season?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they brought in a 5-star freshman, Bryce Underwood, number 1 overall high school recruit this past year. So big things are on the horizon, they think. I don't know if it'll necessarily be this year, year 1 or year 2, but he's going to get an opportunity. We talked about Michigan really struggled at quarterback last year. They lost several of those guys either through eligibility issues or they just left the program. So Bryce Underwood, I think the deck is clear for him to become the starter, I think, this year. They did bring in an experienced transfer from Fresno State who might give him some push here in camp, but like between the high hopes for him and the NIL money he's getting paid, he's getting millions of dollars a year now through NIL. So he's the guy moving forward. We'll just see how quickly he can adapt. Michigan did bring in a high level receiver from Indiana, Donovan McCulley, this year, so they think they're going to have more weapons on the outside. For Michigan, I think it's going to come down to this year the offensive line. If the offensive line can hold up, I think they'll be a fringe playoff team. They'll have enough weapons, I think, enough playmakers to do it. We talked about the guys they lost on defense: Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, but they're bringing a lot back on that side of the ball as well. So I think Wink Martindale's back as the defensive coordinator for the second year. He's really happy with the depth they have. So, and in college, really depth is the name of the game because between injuries and just going up against some of these high-powered offenses, you got to be able to keep your guys fresh. And that's why Michigan was so good a couple years ago, won a national championship in 2023. They had so many guys that they felt like they could start like that national title team. Kenneth Grant was like a part-time starter. He wasn't even a full-time starter, and that's how good that the defensive front was. So
It's crazy to think about. Yeah.
I know, right? 18 months ago, it's like whoa, So yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to be better, I think, than the 8-5 they were last year, right? And I think they'll have a shot to get in the playoff. But it's going to come down to the offensive side of the ball and whether quarterback play can be marginally better and the offensive line can hold up.
Yeah, and I know when last weekend Miami took Quinn Ewers from Texas, then the reports came out he turned down $8 million from some school to go play quarterback. And I'm saying to myself, well, there's only a handful of schools that can do that. It's like Ohio State, Michigan, probably Notre Dame, throw in Miami, but they just paid for Carson Beck and they gave him like
Yep.
4. Was Michigan the school? Because $8 million, there's only a couple that can do that. Was
Yeah.
Michigan like this one in on him? Maybe
I don't see Michigan paying that much.
that's a lot.
What we
If it's
understand,
true.
Bryce Hunter would have got like $3 or $4 million a year. So
Okay.
like I don't see him getting 8. I guess it's possible, but no, I didn't hear his name in Michigan.
I mean, you got the Tom Brady money coming in. You got the Dave Portnoy One Bite Pizza money coming in. I mean, how are they NIL wise? Are they like creme de la creme up there with Ohio State's, up there with like all the top programs? Or I mean, I would think they have to be, right?
They're getting there. Just a
Okay.
couple of years ago, they were near the bottom. They weren't very aggressive with NIL. Now,
A
part
lot
of
of
it
schools caught on quick.
well, yeah, right.
I'm
Part
a
of it was-
Syracuse guy. We had nothing. Now we're not that high by any means, but we caught on quick. What you got to do to win?
Well, right, exactly. You need to be competitive nowadays,
Yeah.
especially if you want that high level talent. And I think Michigan realized it. Look, they're still under NCAA investigation, so I think that gave them some pause and some worry about
Gotta be careful,
pushing the
yeah.
envelope with that. But no, they've certainly been more apt to open the checkbook the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game right now. Until they change the rules, play by the rules that are there, and you got to pay the kids this type of money if you want to compete. Otherwise, you are just dead in the water. That's just the name of it. But Aaron, thanks so much for a few moments of your time today to talk Kenneth Grant, all things Michigan. Follow Aaron McMann at mlive.com and at the Ann Arbor News. Follow him on social media at Aaron McMann. Aaron, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Hey guys, Mike here from DolphinsTalk.com. Just want to thank you for watching this video today. Please be sure to like and subscribe to this video. And also just thank you in general. I know you have a lot of other podcast options out there these days, whether it's with the Miami Dolphins or about the Miami Dolphins and with non-Miami Dolphins podcast stuff like true crime, politics, NBA, Major League Baseball. We do appreciate the support you guys provide us, and we do thank you for watching our content. We appreciate it more than you'll ever know. So thank you so much. Just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, don't forget to sign up for our Patreon service. Go to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. And for just $3 a month, you will get more Miami Dolphins coverage and shows. Patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. Thank you again, and everyone have a great day.